I'm Rafat. Thanks for joining me for this training. I'm going to walk you through how to set up a Notion custom AI agent on your workspace. And this specific agent is going to help you with blocking time on your calendar to manage the process of keeping all your medical appointments up to date throughout the year. And it's particularly helpful if you're like me and you're not only coordinating care for yourself, you're scheduling appointments for every single member of your family at the required frequency and cadence that they need to appear on your calendar. And if you are in the world, you have a day job, a corporate job, or you're busy managing a variety of things, you know that remembering to call the offices at the right times when they're open, avoiding the lunch schedules, all the things. This is going to help you manage the process much more efficiently. And if you're fortunate enough to have an assistant, this is going to help provide the documentation and the standard so that they can manage it well on your behalf. Let's jump into it. First thing I want to share is the process of setting up Notion custom agents is really simple and straightforward. I'm going to do a slightly different process here, and it's designed for people who are not accustomed to building agents. If this is your first time doing it, I want you to see it this way first because it's designed to capture the information that the agent is going to need to manage the process well for you ahead of time. And then we'll put you into the builder and show you how to set it up. And you're going to see that it is extraordinarily simple and straightforward. I'm going to jump right into this template, which has everything laid out for you. I want you to go ahead and put in your information, your name, your email address, and think through the lens of who is the primary person and that person, the corresponding email address and calendar that will be used to manage this process. And from there, I want you to think about how often do you want to make this block on your calendar? Are you doing it for one person, two people, four, more? Because that's going to determine the frequency and the cadence. Use options that work best for you and your workload. So for me to begin with, I was thinking if I do this twice a month, eventually I'll be able to taper this off. It's often in my life easier to release time than to find it. So I want to have the calendar blocks placed, but I can always repurpose the time for other things if needed. A good entry point for me to get started is to block 2 Tuesdays a month, and then from there, I can get a feel for how we'll adjust it later. This is the scheduling rhythm section. You can adjust this to whatever makes sense for you. I don't like making calls out to healthcare offices on Mondays. I feel like they get slammed because of all the people trying to reach them from the weekend. I like to give them to at least Tuesdays. That's just my approach. You do what works best for you and the cadence of your calendar. In the section below this is just to help guide you. Go ahead and document the names of the people that you're going to need to send communications to or have calendars connected to your Notion workspace where it can also go ahead and add that appointment directly to the calendar on their behalf as well. So this is where you're going to document the names and the calendar addresses and just for your own guidance, what type of calendar. So as of now, as of this recording, Notion has the ability to automate or connect to calendars that are Google, iCal, or Notion calendar. So if one of those isn't already within your setup and you want to have this ability to push appointments from the agent to a calendar view, my recommendation is to go ahead and explore those three options and find what works best for you. You'll want to set that up ahead of building the agent. And this section right underneath that is critical. This is where you're going to list all of the names of the providers that you need to schedule appointments for. So your primary care physician, your dentist, any specialist. So ladies, if you have an OB, any other care providers, therapists, that you are scheduling these appointments with at a structured interval, go ahead and add the contact information that you're going to need to access when you see that block come up on your calendar. And from there, everything else is more guidance and prompting. So I like to have a visual reminder. You're not going to pass the information of your insurance card through the agent, but I do like to have notes that are present on the calendar invite reminding me of what I'm doing, my checklist before I pick up the phone. Make sure I have these things in front of me. So think more that way. Think of a visual cue to remind you to have anything that you're going to need to actually get through booking these appointments. So you know the providers, you know the experiences that you typically have when you're scheduling your appointments. If there's anything that you need to remember to have with you or someone booking on your behalf needs to have access to, I highly recommend including this little section in the instructions. Everything else is going to give the agent direction, like a standard on how to build out that regular, like calendar invitation and what should be included in it. And it's going to also give the agent some reminders on what it should do and what it should absolutely not do. And then I recommend looking through this bottom section and just getting a feel for what are the pieces of information when I start running the test, when I start putting through my scenarios of I'm giving it the instruction to book the time, what do I want to validate is coming through on that calendar invite. So from there, that's the template. I recommend doing this first. And then what you'll do is you'll copy the information from the template. You can copy paste. Or if you're inside a Notion and you're using this as a Notion template, you could just copy the link to this and then put it into the building window that we're going to step into next. And so that's the walkthrough of how to prepare to build this particular type of agent. Now I'm going to guide you through the process of where to look when you're getting ready to create your first custom agent. Right on this left navigation panel, which will be named whatever your workspace is, you're going to look for the panel or the section of that panel that says agents. And right now it's technically still in beta. And here's a note on what that means. Through May 3rd, 2026, Notion custom agents are free to use. They're free to build, free to run. After May 3rd, they will convert to being credit based, which means that in addition to the workspace subscription, to use these agents, you'll have to buy a block of credits and make sure that you have credits available to run the automations that your agents are set up to do. So I want to make sure that that's very clear. You still have plenty of time to get this up and running and start seeing the value that it can create for you and your family. But you're going to go into the agents panel, you'll hit the plus sign, and then you're going to come into the window that says, what should your custom agent do? Well, you are now in a position to use that template that we created. And I'm going to grab the link here, right? And I'm going to come back. Okay, so I just put in a very straightforward prompt, which is I want you to create an agent that blocks time on my calendar to manage my family's medical appointments. And you can find the information, and this is where you're going to paste the link from your template into the window. Now, I went in and created one more specific to my workspace. So I am copying that one. And now you can see that the agent building window is coming open and it's going to start thinking about everything you've asked it to do. It's reviewing the page of the template that you've created. And now it is going to kick into building its instructions. Okay, so now the agent has reviewed the template doc that I prepared, and it's filling in some very specific information because I had gone in and customized it with my email address, and it now knows who my sample provider is that I put in, and it's preparing the instructions to be very specific to what was in that prep doc. And then on the right side in the settings window, you can see how all of the instructions are populating. You can see the agents that say when information is missing. This is like the behavior of how to handle. You can see some of the metadata coming in, which is great. I want you to pay close attention to the sections here that talk about tools and access. And so in this particular case, the agent doesn't really need to view any information beyond the template document that you've prepared. That's why I designed the template that way. So go ahead and just make sure that you're keeping that template up to date with all the accurate information. But then a simple can view permission should be appropriate. Where you're going to need to add a few additional steps is to look at the calendar setup. So for me, my workspace is already prepared. So this is the section in which you will add your calendar. Go ahead and hit the plus, and then any calendars that are already connected to your workspace account will appear here. Once you got your calendar connected, you can give the agent guidance on which particular model you want it to run off of. Note that not all models are created equal. Some will consume more tokens, some will consume fewer tokens. But the trade off was always going to be how complex is the automation or the process that you're asking it to do, because the tokens that consume the models that consume fewer tokens don't necessarily handle complex automations as well. But this is a fairly straightforward thing. You're asking the agent to process off of a template that sits on your database, and then you're asking it to schedule an appointment. So try the auto feature and then try some of the smaller models. You may find that they'll work for you. And you can also look at this handy guide that Notion has put in, giving you a breakdown of the differences in the models and what their key benefits are. So here's the last thing that you're going to want to test, right? The part about setting the automation itself, that is going to be at the very top where it says triggers. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. If you want to manually program it, you absolutely can. But if you are newer to setting up automation, my recommendation is going to be to come into the chat window and talk with your agent. I put a prompt into the window asking the agent to set up the trigger that will create a report that will come into the Notion inbox. And that's important because it's going to give you that visual cue to take action and remind you that that block is on your calendar. Which I'm looking at it, it has read and write permissions, so it is there. It's asking questions back, right? So this is what makes building in the Notion workspace simple. You type in natural language what you want the agent to do, and it will give you back the information that it needs or is missing or keeping it from doing its work. I'm going to answer all of the questions that the agent put into the window, which is I'm confirming that it has read and write access. I'm approving it to run the automation. And then I am going to confirm that I only want this report generated on the first and third Tuesday. It's also telling me what it's doing along the way. It's confirming permissions, it's generating, it's looking back across the instructions to see what it needs to update, what triggers it needs to set. We'll come back to the top. And you can see now that there are some things here. When the agent is mentioned in Notion, that's an important trigger because sometimes you're going to want to manually trigger your agent. So that is how you would do it. But the other thing is we're asking it to run on a schedule. And that's what the agent is defining right now in this trigger window. And now you can see that the agent is creating these events on the left in the working panel. It asked me to confirm if I wanted those booked, and the answer is yes. So I hit continue. So for the report, and this is the report that will come up as a notification right here in your inbox to remind you, to give you that visual prompt that you should check your calendar because the block is there. It is scheduled for the first and third Tuesdays. So that even though the agent is running every Tuesday, it is going to only block the times every other Tuesday as defined. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And I'm going to say you can change this. So once you've got your first load of appointments in, you can come in and change the cadence and the frequency. That's what I mean by you're going to play around to find what works best to manage the schedule for the number of people and the number of providers in your household. So I'm going to exit out of here. And then I'm going to go take a peek and see what's on my calendar and verify what I see. So while I see the calendar events have been scheduled, they don't have the information that I requested. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause, I'm going to go back into the screen, and I'm going to remind the Notion agent to pass over those details so that I have that visual prompt. So I'm going to go ahead and reprompt the agent in the window, reminding it to add these details to the calendar events. And I will ask it to update the existing calendar events with this information. The agent is confirming that it understood my instructions and it did what I asked it to do. So I'm going to pause and go back over into the calendar view and see what it looks like now. Perfect. This time, when I come back into the view, you can see that there are notes. It's got a checklist. It's got the name of the provider. I've only put one into my table within the template just to test how the process is working. And it's going to remind me to list or to have that information for the dates that we need for family members, medical insurance cards. Like, it sounds simple, but the process of having it in the calendar just gives you that reminder, that visual cue to prep ahead of making the calls and making sure you can get the most out of that hour block you can. And so that's really it. The last thing that I always recommend is just making sure you come in and click save. In this case, there are no additional changes. It's not showing that any steps need to be saved, but really that's it. It's that simple. So if you can type, and you can actually use the microphone if you prefer to talk your input into the window. Both work really, really well. I recommend building this, of course, on desktop to make the process run more efficiently. And with that template fully prepared, it's very simple for the agent to bring all of that insight in and to connect it into the instruction page. So I hope that this template is valuable. I hope you test out building your very own household medical appointment scheduler. And if you have any questions whatsoever on ways that you could kind of tweak it to make it run differently or better for your specific use case, you can always send me a message. I'm always happy to help. And I particularly have that working mom in mind when I built this. Not because I think that we're the only ones who manage calendars and schedules. I just remember how difficult this process was for me in trying to hold the work calendar and career together, and still remembering in the back of my head, like, oh, this person hasn't been to the dentist yet. I got to make sure I get that on the books and this appointment on the books. So when you're trying to manage all the things for all your people, I hope this brings you just a little bit of relief into your schedule and makes your life that much simpler. Can't wait to connect with you on the next one, and we'll see you soon. Bye.